Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Boxing Resume, where I'm going to be going over the level of competition that Iron Mike Tyson has faced. Because there's been a lot of talks over the years. People think that the 80s was an easy time and that Mike Tyson was somehow overhyped. And I'm going to show you guys that that is not true. Now, James Tillis was a very solid guy, a guy who fought a lot of different world champions, but always lost his biggest fights. Then came Marvis Frazier, the son of Smoking Joe Frazier, and this guy was pretty good. He only lost to two legends, Larry Holmes and Mike Tyson, and he actually has a win over James Tillis. So he was a very good heavyweight. Not quite his dad was a all-time great legend, but good win either way. Mitch Green only had one loss on his resume, and that was to Trevor Berbick. So this was a good win, good grudge match, and it's a classic fight. Check it out if you ever get a chance. Mike Tyson's first title shot came against Trevor Berbick, the last man to defeat Muhammad Ali, and Mike Tyson looked spectacular. Got the knockout done in just 2 rounds. Great look for Iron Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's first defense of his WBC came against James Bone Crusher Smith. A real test, even though he was 19-5, he had lost to Tim Witherspoon, Marvin Frazier. He beat Tim Witherspoon, and of course he lost to Mike Tyson. So the guy's just been around, and he definitely was a dangerous opponent. Good win for Mike Tyson. Pinklin Thomas was also a solid guy. He had wins over Tim Witherspoon and Mike Weaver. He lost to Trevor Berbick, which was his only loss at the time. And Mike Tyson did his thing once again. Tony Tucker was an undefeated IBF heavyweight world champion. He was 34-0 at the time, and he had just finished beating Buster Douglas right before he fought Mike Tyson. Then comes Tyrell Biggs, an undefeated guy, 15-0. There was a lot of hype behind him at the time, but Mike Tyson was just too strong and powerful. Then Mike fights the legend, Larry Holmes. Now, a lot of people felt like Larry Holmes was past his prime, but Larry Holmes actually beat, some good fighters after losing to Mike Tyson. He actually won a ton of fights. His last fight, he was 57 years old, and he beat up Butterbean. Not to mention that he beat a young Ray Mercer right after losing to Mike Tyson. Tony Tubbs is a former champion who has definitely fought a who's who in the sport when it's all said and done. So this was just another good win for Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson then faces a legend in Michael Spinks. A lot of people say that Michael Spinks was past his prime, but, he was undefeated. The guy had never lost, and Mike Tyson knocked him out. Then fights another legend in Frank Bruno. Now, Frank Bruno was talking a lot of crap in this fight, so it was a very satisfactory win for Mike Tyson when he finally shut him up and knocked him out. Carl Thomas was a solid guy. He had wins over Burt Cooper and Trevor Burbick. He did lose a couple of fights to Mike Weaver and Larry Holmes, but like I said, very tough guy, solid dude. Mike Tyson's first defeat came in a huge upset against James Buster Douglas. Nobody expected this to happen, but Mike Tyson was definitely not at his best. Mike Tyson then bounces back against Henry Tillman. Now, this guy was an Olympic gold medalist and he beat Mike Tyson in the amateurs. So it was a really good knockout for Mike Tyson. Alex Stewart only had one loss, and it was to Evander Holyfield. And this guy was just pretty solid. At the end of his career, he ended up fighting a who's who. But at this time, he didn't have any big signature wins. The two fights against Donovan Razor Ruddock are absolute classic fights. Now, Donovan does have wins over like James Bone Crusher Smith, Michael Dokes, Greg Page, Phil Jackson, just to name a few. So he was definitely a world-class fighter. Mike Tyson then goes to jail for a couple of years, and his first fight back, he fights this guy, Peter McNeely. Just a really annoying dude. Not really world-class, but it was his first fight back, so it was a pretty big fight at the time. Buster Mathis Jr. was a undefeated heavyweight, and the guy had a pretty good record, but at the end of the day, Mike Tyson was just too much. Then comes the rematch, Mike Tyson versus Frank Bruno. Frank Bruno gets beat up and knocked out again. No shocker here. Bruce Seldon was a very good fighter, but this night he looked afraid, and Mike Tyson just basically made it look easy because the man was never in the fight. He was just too scared to face Mike Tyson. He then has two back-to-back fights with Evander Holyfield. Real Deal versus Mike Tyson was two big fights. Mike Tyson lost both of them, one by knockout and one by disqualification. Franz Botha was a very good fighter. This was definitely a good win. He only had one loss, and this kind of showed that Mike Tyson still had it in him to fight at the highest level of the sport. Orlin Norris was a very good fighter. He had a win over Oliver McCall, lost to Burt Cooper and Tony Tucker, and had a no contest against Tony Tubbs. He also beat Greg Page, worthy of mentioning. So, very solid guy, but unfortunately, it was a no contest. Now, Lou Savarese was a very good fighter. He had wins over Lance Whitaker. He lost to Michael Grant, Mike Tyson, Kirk Johnson, and Evander Holyfield. But he also beat Tim Witherspoon. And, overall, this was a very good fighter. So it was a good look for Mike Tyson, and it showed that Mike Tyson still belonged at the top of the sport. Andrew Galata had a reputation for being a dirty fighter. I mean, the guy was beating Riddick Bowe in both the fights, and he got disqualified towards the end. He also fought guys like Lennox Lewis. He beat Tim Witherspoon, Jesse Ferguson. He lost to Michael Grant. Just overall, he had a draw with Chris Bird for a world title 7 different times. He fought against John Ruiz in a close fight, Lamont Brewster. He ended up getting knocked out. So overall, I mean, this guy, is a legend to some. But Mike Tyson got the knockout in the second round. But unfortunately, Mike Tyson messed up and he basically failed the drug test. He was smoking weed and ended up getting a no contest. Shame on Mike. Now, Now, Brian Nielsen, he did beat a couple of good guys, but they were all past their prime. He did have a spectacular record of 82-1 when he fought Mike Tyson, so it is a pretty decent look. After that, Mike Tyson faces Lennox Lewis, an absolute legend. Gets his butt whooped, but you got to give him credit for stepping up against such a great opponent. Clifford Etienne was a very good fighter. I wouldn't say he was great. He did have a loss to Freso Kendo, who is a good fighter. He had a draw with Franz Botha before he fought Mike Tyson. So overall, this was a pretty good bounce back after losing to Lennox Lewis. Mike Tyson had two last fights, one against Danny Williams, a very unknown fighter, and Kevin McBride, two guys that was not supposed to get their hand raised against Mike Tyson. So this was a clear sign that it was time to hang him up. And he definitely did, but years later, almost 20 years after that, he wants to make a comeback and fights Jake Paul. Loses, but he was almost 60, so you can't even blame him. They gave him millions of dollars. But overall, when I look at this resume, I have to give him a lot of credit. This guy was 5'10", fighting some of the biggest heavyweights. And I disagree with the notion that there wasn't a lot of guys to fight in the 1980s. I think that's total bull crap. As you saw, there was a lot of guys that Mike Tyson fought. And he might not have a better resume than Evander Holyfield in heavyweight, but man, I'd see this as a A- type resume. What do you guys think? Let me know. Give me some feedback. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
You come across like a nice guy, but you're really a piece of shit.
Hey,
with that comment.
Come on.
Nah, that was a piece of fuck you. That was a piece of shit.
You know, we're doing live TV.
Man, I don't care. What are you gonna do about it?
All right. Is it nerve-wracking for you to do something like this, or is it more nervous for you to box? How does it compare?
I don't know. It's more nerve-wracking for me to hear us talking to a rat piece of shit like you.
Come on, Mike.
No, because you're a piece of shit.
All right.
You really have to.
We're gonna wrap up this interview. Thank you for coming in.
Fuck you.